Welcome back to Bread and Butter, everybody. We're serving up the basics for Hearthstone improvement in episode 94. And as always, I'm Doc McButt, joined by my co-host Tito. Tito, how are you doing today?
Doc, I'm doing just fine, thanks.
And listeners, we have our very special returning guest, Dawn, aka Dragonrider. How are you doing today?
Hello, I'm doing well. Always a pleasure to be on the show with you guys.
It's been a while.
Thank you for coming on.
It has. It feels like it has been quite a while this time around, so apologies for that.
It's all good.
Yeah, no, you're good. So, Dawn, what have you been doing inside of the world of Hearthstone?
Yes. No. I've been playing some standard, still not as much as I would like to, just because things have been crazy and busy, and then I was like sick for a little bit, and then it's like, just feels like everything was getting in the way. But yeah, I've been mostly playing standard, especially after the most recent patch. Once Mage got nerfed down a little bit, then it's like, okay, cool, we can try to play some things, test some stuff. Always keep going back to try and test. After like every patch, I'm like, Elemental Shaman? Yeah? Can we do it? Can we do the Elemental Shaman thing? Okay. It's okay.
You were talking, you were saying you were doing pretty well with it on Doctor 3 this week.
Yeah. I keep going back to it, and then I'll try something else, and then I keep going back to it, but yeah, it still does pretty decently. It's just a matter of like where I'm at, like match-wise, like MMR-wise, and who I'm facing against. As I get a little closer to Legend and things like that, it starts to fall off a little bit, but yeah, it's not too bad.
How about yourself, Doc?
Yeah, so some BGs, but I've been playing a lot of Wild. Still just absolutely love Wild. I've still been playing Even Shaman. I did increase my star bonus in Wild, so that helps the climb a little bit. Still gonna lose stars in Platinum, but that's better than losing stars at Gold 5. And I haven't really been using a deck tracker because most of my games have been during my lunch breaks at work. But because Even Shaman is the way it is, I can generally get on average about 5 to 6 games in every day on my lunch. And so I'm Gold 3, I think, right now, with just only playing games on my lunch. I might have played one game when I was doing my outside of Hearthstone stuff this weekend. But yeah, Wild's a bunch of fun. I love seeing the variety of decks that Wild has. Granted, if my deck does what it's supposed to do, I don't get to see those decks do what they're supposed to do. Because listeners, if you don't play Wild, Even Shaman, you generally are shooting for lethal between turn 4 and 6. Like that's the sweet spot. Like 4 is the nuts, 6 is like a longer game, and then I would say like 5 is the average. But I've definitely had matchups where I've played the aggro deck in a more mid-rangey control-y way, and it's like, which turned out to be the correct way to play the matchup I was in. So it's just been fun learning a new deck, although it's a very like hyperbolic deck. It's very polarizing, but Hearthstone's fun. How about yourself, Tito?
I am stuck in the D5 to Legend loop as usual, but I'm not trying super hard, really. I'm having fun. I'm playing Pipsy Paladin. I'm playing Mech Warrior, and I'm playing a weird Treant Druid that, only a few games of it, but a weird Treant Druid that plays Huddle Up. And if you don't know what Huddle Up is, I'm not surprised. It is the 7-mana spell that summons, fills your board up with Naga, which isn't really good, but it can be okay if you happen to play Cultivation on it because you've been playing Treants. And it's interesting. I pilot in the streams I've had where I've been playing it, keep saying, I don't know how you're winning this game and you're going to win, and this is not right. So I've been enjoying it. I've really been enjoying the Mech Warrior. I had been winning with it a lot. I still have a winning record, even though yesterday I tanked like a 60% win rate or a 65% win rate. And I'm probably back close to 55 now or something. We didn't do so well yesterday, but it's a fun deck and it's simple. It's not very complicated, which, is a very definition of simple. But anyway, Dragonrider, what have you been doing outside of the game?
Outside of the game, a lot, as always. But more recently, it has been getting back into doing more consistent content. I have started up streaming a little bit again, and I've also been committing more to YouTube videos. So that's kind of been my big thing lately. With putting out, I have started what I'm calling Wild Hearts Wednesday, which is for a new TCG that's coming out early next year. I've really been connecting with the team and really been enjoying that game. So yeah, every Wednesday I'm doing a video on that. And then every Saturday I'm putting out Star Wars Unlimited video. So Star Wars Saturday. So yeah, it's been good to do some content that's not just Hearthstone and kind of do a little bit of a mix. And of course, the couple podcasts that I do. So yeah, I've been really enjoying getting back into content and doing more of that. And of course, still in school and running AFG and all those other things that I do.
Yeah, you posted kind of in AFG what you've been working on and what you had planned. And my first thought was, Dawn, slow down.
Yeah, you did tell me that. I posted a lot. I posted a whole list. I was like, here's my plans for the month. And it was 18 plus Hearthstone videos and 4 Wild Hearts video or 5 Wild Hearts videos, 4 Star Wars videos, something else. AFG. Oh, I didn't even include AFG in that list. I don't know. It was a whole bunch of stuff. But
hey, Dawn.
Yeah. Yes.
Do you ever sleep?
What is that?
Is that just hearing the numbers of videos that you're have planned this month? Absolutely crazy. I could not imagine ever doing that. That is wild.
I know. And part of me is I'm following Tito's advice. He said, don't go from 0 to 100. Go from 0 to 40 to 60 to 80 and ramp it up. And here I am. I'm yeah, I'm doing that. And then I'm am I? I feel like I am. No, I don't feel like I am. Maybe I am. No, I'm not. And I'm I can't decide. So I don't know. I don't know how well I'm doing or not, but I feel good about what I'm doing. And I feel like I've been able to keep up with at least most of it. So I'm happy with that. If I can set the bar high and at least accomplish most of it, then I feel like I'm doing well.
How about yourself, Doc? What have you been up to?
Yeah. So as always, pretty busy outside of Hearthstone. This weekend, I went up to Pocatello, Idaho to go visit Storm Rage over from Blizzlet because he and a few of my other friends were rapping on a play. So I got to go see them perform in a play, which I had never seen Storm Rage act before. I've seen him direct. And then we had the cast party afterwards. It was 4 hours of karaoke. And then we played a Blood on the Clock Tower for 2 hours. And it was a 15-person game of Blood on the Clock Tower. So for those who may not know what Blood on the Clock Tower is, it is a social deduction game like Werewolf or Among Us. Except you sit in a big circle. There's a day-night cycle where at nighttime you only look up if the game master taps your knee. And then you look up and then they can share confidential information with you. And then you have to try to find out who the bad people are. It was super fun. I also tried absinthe for the first time. So I got to drink some absinthe because Raven from the Blizzlet Discord, who one of my friends, but every other time I've gone up to Idaho, he's always been out of town. So it's been almost 4 years since the last time I've seen Raven in person. And we were talking and he asked me if I like drinks that tasted like black licorice. And I was like, you know what? I don't mind Jaeger and I like drinking Ouzo. And so I was like, yes, I'll try something that tastes like black licorice. And it was some absinthe and it's crazy. I mean, it was American absinthe, so it's not the crazy stuff you hear all the horror stories about, but fun drink. It was a good time. Helped Daniel figure out some stuff for the ISU esports. He needed to get some equipment working, so his partner and I just played Overwatch at ISU as he spectated us and tried to get some new equipment that the program got working. And yeah, came home and I'm getting ready to go on a trip this weekend. And it's pretty busy. How about yourself, Tito?
It's been pretty busy. It's been weird for me. Dawn is ramping up the content. I actually kind of in a position where I'm going to be ramping down the content a little bit. I really need to. I'm already focused on trying to find work, but it's been tough out there. It is really tough. So I am going to focus double, triple, quadruple down, trying to find some work. So I'm probably going to put my other podcasts on a hiatus for a little bit. And I'm going to stream. I'm still going to stream because I need that social interaction. I need to recharge my social battery a little bit, but I'm going to probably cut back the number of nights I stream, at least for now, and just focus on really finding something to provide. So, and there's some other things going on that I really don't want to get into. So, I don't want to be a bummer. So we're going to move right on past this real fast. And we're going to talk about, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about reflections and predictions. So we're coming about, we can see the next expansion on the horizon, right? They're filming stuff. We know that when you start seeing people with pictures at Irvine near the statue, something's coming. Last time we got that, that last time we got the video was that was done in Europe, right? With the plane, but we know something's coming. So it's always kind of good to kind of look back and look at where we're going right now and then kind of look to the future. So Dragonrider, what are your thoughts on the current meta right now?
The current meta feels okay. It feels like it's a little bit all over the place to me. So I think, again, kind of after the patch to bring down the power level a little bit of Mage, just so that you weren't having those huge like bomb swing turns as early, it's kind of given a little bit more room for more stuff to come around. So it's been really interesting of a meta to try to see like things kind of shift and change and decks change up a little bit and see what's being good and what's not. And it's been a pretty interesting meta. I feel like I've been enjoying it when I have played.
Doc?
I haven't been playing a bunch of standard, but from when I was playing it, it felt okay. Like it, other than when Mage became the problem it felt like it generally, like almost anything, every class had something that was kind of viable. There was just felt like there was a lot of different decks that were out there. I didn't play a bunch of them just because I mainly play one to three decks at any given point during an expansion cycle. But I think that in general, this expansion has been a success. Granted, mini set threw a big old pickle in there with Mage getting to do some degenerate stuff, but I think it's okay.
And I think that with the Mage, it wasn't just that Mage was doing degenerate stuff. Is like nobody else really got a power increase. So it was like, well, everyone, we've been waiting for big spell Mage. We finally got it, and we didn't get anything else. So then I think that really contributed to it. But I like the meta right now. I don't love the meta right now, but I like it. It's balanced. I feel like I can play a bunch of different things. I don't feel like there's anything that is overwhelmingly oppressive. Sometimes I get a little sick of seeing the same like Reno Druid or something, but it's not a power outlier. It's just, yeah, we've done this. Oh, good. Hey, turn 9 Yogg. Or turn 5 Yogg. Good for you. But it hasn't been exciting. But like I said, I've liked it, but I'm not like super excited about where it is at. So I think we always want to see a balanced meta, or we talk about a balanced meta. Balanced metas aren't always exciting. Some you want to have, maybe not Mage, but you want to have things that excite you. And that's not there right now. Like I've enjoyed a couple of the decks I've been playing, but I'm not like overly thrilled to play it. And it's not really what I thought about going into this question, but I'm going to be honest with myself. And yeah, it's fine, but it's not amazing. So aside from like the last couple of weeks, we just talked about, Dawn, how are your overall feelings been about Perils in Paradise, this expansion?
That's a really good question. I feel like it's been more all over the place than previous like expansions as a whole. And I mean that by it's felt like at one point it was like, this is not very fun. And then at one point it was like, okay, this is better. And then at one point it was like, this is not fun. And it feels like there's been a lot of ups and downs in this meta. Whereas before it would be like, okay, this whole expansion hasn't been very fun. Or, it's felt like we're just seeing the same decks and then, oh, they do a balance patch and then like, oh, there's the same decks from what we just saw before. Or the mini set doesn't have as much of an impact as we'd hope. Whereas this one we did. And so it's felt like it's been very like up and down, up and down, up and down, as opposed to previous expansions that we've had. I don't know if that's good or bad, but just that's what I've noticed.
Doc, how about yourself?
I think this expansion has overall been pretty fun. Like I did just say, like Big Spell Mage was kind of a big old stinky pickle in that fun. Just because I'm a big proponent of cost reduction in Hearthstone is one of the most game breaking things that exists, especially when classes can get things to cost 0, especially if it's a class other than Rogue. When Rogue does it, it's still not okay. They're just the ones who get to do it more often than everybody else. But like flavor wise and like set direction, I feel like this Perils in Paradise was this absolute slam dunk. Hearthstone, I believe, is at its best when it like really leans into itself being the funny, zany part of like the greater Warcraft universe, whether or not they still want to be exactly tied into Warcraft or whatever, like they had been in the past. But for sets, debut set, Sage's debut set lead set, I think he did a great job. Him and the team. This just everything about this expansion I really, really like even down to the art and some of the voice lines and the VFX, like just everywhere around the set. I feel like the flavor has been really on point. They really made it look and feel like a vacation or going somewhere cool. So I really, really appreciate that. I can't wait to see what the team cooks up next.
Oh, we'll talk about that in a minute. I like the set. It was fun. I really like the concept of Taurus. I didn't like that we didn't have an actual keyword that was functional within the game. Like Taurus was a deck building keyword, and you normally have some kind of new mechanic in the game. You know what I mean? Like Death Rattle or whatever. Not Death Rattle, but we didn't have that, and that was fine. But I think that kind of also took away from the excitement, because that's always like Excavate was an expansion, and was a keyword, and we didn't get that, and which was fine. I liked that they did the Taurus thing. I wish we had a little more of it. In fact, I was kind of hoping that the mini set was going to break the normal traditions of only like 3 legendaries, and we were going to get a new Taurus for each class, or some kind of high, maybe like tri-class Taurus that was like, these 3 class can Taurus into this or something weird, but that would have been crazy to balance. I understand that. And I think what we saw here was an experiment. I think that this was kind of the first step into, can we do something like Magic that has multiple colors and you can build a green, white deck and a rainbow deck or whatever. I'm wondering if this was just kind of a testing the waters to see, hey, what if we had more of that? And it's had its problems, and it's definitely had successes. Like, you have these cards that are in mostly Rogue that are not necessarily a problem in Rogue, but are problems in other, or are functional in other classes. Conniving Conman, great card when they changed the name. Been great in Paladin. It's been great in Mage. Same thing with the discount character there. The 3 mana, 3/2 discount the next card, non-rogue card by 2. So, or not, I forget if that one's your class or non-rogue card. I think it's non-rogue card. So, Seashell. So I think that's been really interesting. I'm kind of disappointed. I've learned lessons as far as evaluating cards. Like, even though you can get 3 5/5s for basically nothing, if they don't affect the board on the turn you play them, it's not going to necessarily be a good card. I wanted Sea Shanty to work so bad and it just never did. And it's one of those
Same.
things where we just kind of forget that stats is not enough nowadays. And
Yeah.
you know, we always get excited about these, and you know, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me 17 times, I guess, shame on me. So, but I like the theming of the set. I think the tourists are really good. I hope they keep kind of exploring into that, although I know not everybody loved it. And yeah, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more power out of the mini set. But I will say one thing that I really liked, regardless of how you felt about the meta, whether good and bad, and good and bad, and good and bad, is I like that this expansion, they did not overreact. And they said, we are going to stick to our patch cadence. We're not going to drop emergency patches unless we absolutely have to. And I think a lot of times what we did see was a meta develop. And the boogeyman was only the boogeyman for a couple days. And even though Mage, after the mini set, saw a ton of play, it was like the fifth best deck. It just was ticketus. It was just the thing everybody wanted to do, to an extreme, but it was beatable. And it was easily beatable if you just wanted to play some other classes. The problem is that some people are like, well, I don't want to play Pirate Death Knight. I'm Pirate Demon Hunter. I want to play Rogue, or I want to play this, and I can't because Mage just destroys us. And I can feel that too. So let me ask you this.
To be fair, I still think Mage is fine, which has been a good feeling. Because I've still seen some Mage and it still does okay. It just doesn't have its huge pop-off turn as early, and as, it doesn't have that, wow, this feels unbeatable when I'm playing certain stuff. It still feels like you have a chance, and there is some back and forth in the games against Mage. So I think at least in terms of how they approached that patch particularly, they did just enough. I know some people were like, oh, that's all that's getting touched. Oh, there's only one buff and two nerfs and that's it. But I think in terms of the patch overall itself, it did just enough to allow changes to the meta without completely just nuking the Mage deck from orbit.
And that was a problem we had in the previous meta, right? Where every time we had an expansion, they killed decks. They blew them out from orbit, like you said. And through the entire expansion, even we've had, like I said, limited cadence as far as balance patches. And when they didn't destroy decks either. They tuned them down a little bit, and then the meta kind of adjusted around them. But it never felt like they killed a deck, in my opinion, this time around. But what about the future? So we got the I have in the show notes the image that has the 3 different expansions for Year of the Pegasus, I think. Pegasus. And the third one is got the Hearthstone symbol, but it's like a constellation, and there's a planet behind it, and there's a planet beneath it, and there's swirly space vortexy stuff all around it. So and the color schemes are very light and dark blue and silver and whatnot. Dragonrider, what do you think's coming?
Well, looking at this, I feel like it's got to do something. And I know they've already done Titans, but something still related to Titans, because that's the whole celestial type vibe to it. And so that's what it makes me think of when I look at this image.
So to go on beyond that, if you were to predict the next set, what do you think? What's a hot take prediction?
I'm going to be completely honest. I already know what it is, so I'm not going to make a prediction. I have the insider info.
Fair enough. Doc, I know we don't have any insider info yet.
So I think some of what's on this image kind of looks like the Northern Lights. So what I would want is either something in the northern part of Azeroth or something in the southern part of Azeroth on either pole. We haven't seen a lot of Tuskars recently, so I would like to go somewhere where a lot of the Tuskars are back, because I think that's such a fun culture. I realized my camera's frozen, y'all. I'm sorry. I'll fix it here in a second. But I do agree with Don's guess as well. I think that's a very solid guess, all as red herring as it may be. Um, I don't know. I'm just excited. I kind of want something snow themed, but that could be wistful thinking because we just had something beach themed. But northern pole or southern pole of Azeroth, that's where I want us to go to. I could also see this having to do with something with the Draenei. Get some more space goats in there. Because Draenei did come from, if I'm remembering WoW stuff correctly, did come from outer space.
Yes, Draenei came from outer space.
Yeah, so I think that's on the table as well. But what I really want it to be is some kind of winter wonderland theme. How about yourself, Tito?
Just think of the cute penguins if we got that.
Oh,
Just
Snow
saying.
Flipper, a new version of Snow
God.
Flipper Penguin.
Yes.
You have to keep in mind, Doc, that when we do go north in Warcraft, that is Northrend for the most part, and that's where we've already done the Lich Kings and tied into the Lich Kings a lot of time, and it'd be hard to do Northrend without
But what's
bringing up the
north
Scourge.
of Northrend, Tito?
I don't know who watches the Watchers. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe we're gonna go to Southrend.
And like Don said, I also without having any knowledge, looking at the image, I think of Algalon because it does kind of have that Ulduar kind of Titan-y celestial feel to it. Although we did, like I said, we just had Titans, so I don't imagine us having that. So it looks very spacey and starry, and I like where you went with the Draenei. But I'm going to say that it's going to be Winter Olympics. We're going to have Azeroth Olympics, but the winter brand, and it's going to be themed like that.
I would love that so much.
The Winter Games, I think that would be great. And again, I think it's Algalon, but I don't think that they can do that. I didn't really look at it as kind of like snowy, but yeah, I can see that now. So maybe it is. Maybe it's something frigid and frozen and whatnot. All right. So there's that. Looking forward to that. I'm assuming that this week or next week we'll get the patch that will probably actually that was one thing we missed. That's a question I skipped. So let's cover that real quick. We have one more major patch before the major patch, right? Where they're going to have one more balance change. Usually, where the meta is now, they usually buff a bunch of stuff. They say, here's a bunch of stuff we wish you would have tried. Try it. So what do you think is coming, Don? What do you think we're going to get for buffs and nerfs in the next week or two? And what would you like to see?
Honestly, the only one I want to see is still what I think people are referring to as Unkiliacs. Just the whole Rush and Divine Shield and Lifesteal and all, it's too much. It feels way too much of an outlier compared to all the other combos, and I'm tired of it. I'm tired of seeing it. I just don't want to see it anymore. So that's what I'd like to see patched.
How about buffs? Any thoughts on things you'd like to see buffed?
I mean, I'm still a big believer in the warrior mech death rattle stuff. I still want to see testing dummy and stuff be used a lot. So anything that can help that is what I'd like to see buffed.
I have a list for you that I've been playing, but it does have those death rattle mechs, but it also has that previous card you mentioned.
Yes. Well, yeah, I know. But I don't want it to be Unkiliacs, bring that back, and no, just get that out of there. Give me just repetitive testing dummy. I'm happy.
How about yourself, Doc? What do you want to see nerfed or buffed?
So I'm gonna piggyback off of Dawn's statement earlier. Get Unkiliacs out of here. Make every piece of Ziliax cost 9, so therefore we don't have to worry about it anymore because you literally can't play it unless you're Druid. Druid would still be able to do it. Just get rid of it. we've been dealing with it for basically a year now. Like, get rid of it. Let the meta explode into something different without it there. But in all seriousness, the two cards I really want buffed. I can't remember the name of the first one, but it's the Crocodile Dundee Hunter
Ranger
Legendary.
Gilly.
Yes, want him buffed. Have him summon the Crocs instead of putting them in your hand. Right? Because he puts. I've honestly never played the card. I just see Sadisi tweet about him every once in a while, but it's not enough.
No, it's not.
They need to functionally change that card for it to be playable.
Yeah.
Just have him summon him like to the right of him or something. I don't know. Just make it better. And then Rye Cleaver. That's a card I want to be better. Rye Cleaver to 5, Sandwich to 3. Still probably wouldn't be playable because that's still 8 mana for it, but at least you get it earlier.
Yeah, I've tried to make Rye Cleaver work. I think looking at it, it's probably fundamentally a trap card and will always be fundamentally a trap card. It looks like
but it's not purple.
There. But I don't know. I want it to be good. I don't know how, if you make it good, it's broken. And I think that's the problem, right? If you make it good enough to see play, then it's going to be too good. And I think that it has to be a meme and it has to be fun. And I'm still coming to grips with that. I would like to see them just kind of take half the mini set and buff it and change it. But the problem with the mini set that it looks like is a lot of the cards just don't really have a home. So even if they get buffed, unless they have other kind of synergy to go with them, there's not a whole lot to do with them, right? So I'd like to see them try on a few of them. I'd also like to see them kind of make Death Rattle Warlock interesting. It's not there. The Taurus Summoner Doc Morrow, which was it? It's your Death Rattles trigger twice after you play a Death Rattle minion, destroy it. I mean, at 4 mana, 4/4, that should be good, and it's not. And you get the Party Plan of Vona, and we were all excited about that during theory crafting and when those were announced, and that was going to be a big problem, and that was just going to slot right into some things, and it just hasn't. And I'd like to see them kind of tweak that too. I'd also like to see them revert a few things. I'd like to see them maybe fix what was it? The Warlock card, the Wheel of Doom. I would like to see them revert that card in some way, because not only did they all at once they had a fun deck and they raised the cost of the location, which really didn't need to be done because that killed a bunch of decks. They changed the way the deck worked, the card worked, which was fine. But they also, at the very same time, changed the way Reno cards worked. So that way you couldn't play Reno in that deck, and you couldn't play, mostly the Reno, which took away a big part of the condition. So I'd like to see them kind of tweak Wheel of Doom, Wheel of Death, whatever it's called, to be a little bit more playable again. Because that was a fun card. People liked playing it. It was different. It was kind of like what's the card? Mechathune, which was a different win condition. And I like when we have some different win conditions. So that's what I would like to see. What I would also like to see is what my opponent is going to play. And that's the subject of our main topic tonight, which is hand reading. So as always, we bring in Dragonrider here for fundamentals of Hearthstone. And we've kind of hit most of the basics. So we've started doing some of the advanced classes, and today we're going to dive into hand reading. So, Dragonrider, what is hand reading, and why is it important?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hand reading is basically the skill of being able to recognize what is likely in your opponent's hand. And this is really important for a couple of things, because one thing is you can potentially make your own plays and decisions based on that information on what you think your opponent is holding. But also it can help you become a better player, which I think is a big reason why we want to talk about a lot of these fundamentals and give some advice during these topics, because People want to be better players, right? So knowing how to hand read is not the easiest thing, and it's definitely a skill that you have to continuously focus on. Some of the best players can do it, without kind of thinking about it because they've built up those skills, just like a lot of the other skills that they have. But if you are not one of those top players, or if you're not used to like thinking about what your opponent has in their hand and not just about what they can potentially do overall, there's a big difference there. So let's start with that. So kind of the very base level, and I think we've talked about this before in some of our other topics, like, talking about your plays and thinking about what can my opponent do, or like, let's say it's turn 4. What is their best play for turn 4 with the deck they're playing? What's their best turn 5? What's their best turn 6? That's kind of the very base level. But recognizing something like, hey, if that's the best thing that they can do and they didn't do it, why didn't they do it? That's kind of the next level up. And oftentimes it can be contributed to the fact that maybe they don't have it in their hand, but you can make that read based on if it's a good play for several turns and they don't do it, that's when it's likely that they actually don't have that card in their hand. Sometimes they'll actually make a play that might not be the best overall for what you would say is the best play for that turn, but is best for the situation that's happening in the game. So, for example, maybe turn 4, the best play for their deck could be just playing a 4-costed minion and, getting on the board. Something like, I'm trying to think of the names, but let's say like Plague DK, right? The legendary Helia. That might be like, okay, their best play is playing Helia on turn 4. Right? It puts a body on the board. It works towards their goal for the deck. But then you see they don't play it on turn 4. Maybe they play a 3-cost thing. Or maybe they play a 2-cost and just do a hero power and make a trade. Well, maybe the 2-cost thing that they played is an Acidic Swamp Ooze and remove your weapon. Well, that might be the best case for them to play that in that turn, because they were waiting for you to equip your weapon. Maybe you're like weapon rogue, for example. So that's just like one example of looking from the very base level of what's their best play. Oh, they didn't make the best play, they don't have it, to why didn't they make that best play? Was there another case? But then you start to watch on turn like 5 and turn 6, maybe even turn 7, and they still haven't played Helia. That's when you can basically make that read, and you're basically hand reading and saying, my opponent does not have Helia. My opponent has to make other plays because they don't have it. So that is where I wanted to start. Do either of you have thoughts on like this kind of concept overall of like recognizing when your opponent wants to make plays and why they're making them, and how that corresponds to hand reading?
I have a lot of things, but I also don't want to step on the next couple points you make. So I'm going to hold, and then if we don't get to them, or we do get to them, I'll talk then.
I will say that I'm one to try to bait things. So like if I think I'm playing warrior, right? Or playing into a warrior. If I think that they could have brawl, or I want to set up a board that would be very good for them if they had a brawl, I'll set up like bait boards to see if they'll to push their limit to see whether or not they have brawl. And then if they don't brawl for a couple turns, then sometimes I'll extend a bit further than I wanted to, just to even further outbait the brawl. But like if you see that they keep a card in their mulligan and they don't play it for a long time, doesn't necessarily mean it's super mana expensive. They could also be like me and be someone who has the problem of wanting to hold on a card for optimal value, which the optimal value may not ever come. But also all over the place with this. I'm so sorry. I think baiting cards you think they have is good. I'm so for trying to bait people into playing something, because then as soon as they play it, are they likely to have the second copy in their hand? Probably not. But the odds will go up, so then try to bait something else.
So I think a lot of it is you have to understand, the more you understand the decks that are being played, the better you're going to be at doing this. They may be holding a card because it's a combo piece. They may have mulligan for a thing because it's a combo piece. And if you know that they're a combo deck, that, yeah, maybe they have Adonis, but they're not going to play it until they have all the pieces to go all in and really kind of take advantage of that. Because if they just play it and you kill it, then, oh, well, now it's dead, right? Yeah, obviously you have rest in peace, but that's probably not enough. And a lot of times it's the mulligan, right? So you want to see what they've kept and what they didn't have. And if they've kept something in the mulligan and it's just kind of sitting there, that gives you information. And you may not have all the pieces of information to ferret that out. But as the game goes on, like you're saying, it maybe it is just you're playing warrior and they're holding a viper, and maybe they're they know what you're playing, or they're guessing what you're playing, so they're holding some counterplay to that. So it can get fairly complex, fairly easy, but it's definitely good to notice how long things have been in their hand, which means maybe not watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine or whatever on the side and paying attention to your Hearthstone game. So it can be a lot of things. Anyway, Dawn, continue, please.
Yes. So I'm glad that you guys bring that up, because looking at how long they've had a card in their hand is my next point. And I think that is an extremely valuable thing that is pretty unique to Hearthstone. In other games, especially like physical card games, players can shuffle their hand around. Mm-hmm. They can have their cards in a different order. In potentially other digital games, even like Magic the Gathering Arena, you can still move your cards around, even in the digital client. So Hearthstone is very unique in that aspect, that you cannot move your cards around, so you cannot change the order of your hand. So that is something that for Hearthstone specifically, that we can use as information when trying to read our opponent's hand. So like you guys were both mentioning, right, if they have something that's, from your perspective, it's in the far left of their hand, those are the very first cards they're going to get from that mulligan and from the earliest turns, and it's going to go out to the right. Okay, so the things that they've had in the left of their hand are the oldest cards that they've had for the longest amount of time. So yeah, you can start to recognize, do I think that they are holding something for a very specific reason, such as a tech card like weapon removal, or they're waiting, with a brawl or some kind of like removal piece like that they specifically kept, or that they got early that they just haven't been able to use because it would be inefficient and unreasonable to play that earlier in the game? Or is it something expensive that they haven't had the mana to play yet? That happens a lot, and this is all of these go back to Tito's point of knowing the decks in the meta, kind of knowing what's popular, right? So if there's a bunch of aggro decks in the meta, probably not likely that your opponent is going to have 7, 8, 9, costed stuff in their hand that they're holding on to. So, if you're against an aggro deck, you're not going to sit there and think, oh yeah, they've been holding those cards, they must be really expensive and cost like 7 or more. That's not reasonable for what you're playing against. So kind of recognizing that Hearthstone is unique in that aspect of you can actually kind of see exactly the timing of when they've had cards. And you can do this with or without a deck tracker. You can absolutely kind of track their cards without deck tracker too. So this is not something, that is unique to, oh, I need to have a deck tracker to be able to like watch what, when they got, what turn they got that card or whatever. You can absolutely do it without. You can track it on paper. You can keep mental notes. If you're playing on mobile, just kind of, trying to watch, right, and kind of keep that mental note, right, of when they've had stuff. That can all go a long way in your own decision making. But I think there's even skills in like another thing that Tito mentioned as well, in recognizing that sometimes your opponent might play something that it might be the best play for that turn. The example you gave was in Priest playing Adonis. Like maybe they just want to play it on turn 4 because it is the best thing that they have. And maybe they have all the follow-up to play it on turn 5 because then they have the read that you can't remove it. So they just drop it. Right. So there's also kind of that counterplay of what information am I giving away with my hand that my opponent might be trying to get information and read my hand. And I think there is some value sometimes to baiting out stuff, but I definitely would not recommend just baiting out ever. Like that, probably not the go-to recommendation for every deck every time. That's a little bit more situational. I think a little bit more of like kind of some of that advanced, more nitty gritty, like, okay, we're talking about very specific situations. We're talking about very specific decks. And, you know, I think not only the placement on the left, but when you see people play stuff immediately that they've top decked, that you can kind of get information from that too. Sometimes it is because they top decked it and that's their second copy. I have done this to throw people off, right? I just say, oh, they probably expect that I have removal, but as soon as I top deck that second one, I'm going to play it like real fast. So they think that, oh, I just drew the top deck. That's going to do one of two things. First of all, if they are more of an emotional player, then that's going to kind of bother them, right? They're, oh, of course, they just top decked that. And it's going to make them play a little bit worse. But also, then they might think that I did just top deck it right at the right time, and I don't have the other copy. But I played the one I just drew, full knowing that I have the first copy already in my hand, so they're going to play into that. And then I can use that. So there is advantage to not only reading your opponent's hand, but also sometimes thinking about what your opponent is reading back on your hand as well, and kind of trying to play around that a little bit. Information like, let's say you have one copy of a weapon in your hand that you're going to play next turn, and you just play something like the instrument tech to draw your other copy of it. Maybe you don't want to play instrument tech because you already have one copy in your hand. Again, these are very like situational type examples, but maybe you play the instrument tech to draw the second weapon. The next turn, when you can play the weapon, it is usually correct. And I'm going to say usually, I'm going to say like probably 95 to 99% of the time, it's going to be correct to play the copy that you got off the instrument tech, because your opponent can know that that is the weapon already. If you play the one that you already had in your hand, not the one you drew off of instrument tech, you just gave your opponent extra information because now they know one of your other cards is a weapon in your hand.
I do also want to say on top of this, that if you're running like duplicates, don't run like a golden copy and a regular copy. Run either 2 golden copies or 2 normal copies, because depending on the effect, if your opponent knows you have a certain copy like in your hand that got revealed somehow, and then you play the other version, or they're able to like look through stuff, seeing the other version than what they had previously seen gives them extra information too. No, it's just, there's so many nuanced details with this. I feel like that's a good thing to touch on too.
You don't just play with golden decks?
No. I disenchant almost every single golden card I ever get.
Or just cause chaos like I do and just say, I want to play with my goldens, and just throw a golden one and a regular one in your deck. Just go, yeah, baby, there it is. I'm playing one regular and one golden. Chaos.
There you go. You've been hanging around Smarms too much. So what, like, I would actually, the example of instrument tech was going to be the one I was going to bring up too. So I'm glad you brought that one up, because I can, in my streams, when I was streaming a lot of hand buff and excavate paladin, I mean, I would always say to myself, I'm like, play the one on the right. And to your point about the older cards in their hand on the left, it makes a difference on whether or not it was something that they kept in their initial hand or if it was a mulligan. If they kept it, that is different information than if it's still stuck in their left hand, the left side of their hand, if they mulligan for it, because you mulligan, you don't have any control over. You threw the card back, so that could be their Sunset Volley or whatever, their expensive cards or just not really useful cards. One of the things we talked a little about, the doc was talking about baiting out things. You want to try to maybe see if you can bait out removal. What I like to do, I try to do, is if I think I have knowledge of what they have and I can prevent them from executing their plan, if I think I know they have Helia, and rather than have them play Helia, I'd rather have them have to respond to the board that I'm creating right now, because otherwise they're going to die. That is also a good way to use some of this information. So it's not just all about trying to bait things out, but it's also about maybe to pressure them so they can't play Odin, so they can't do their thing. So that is important as well.
Yeah, that's the opposite of baiting out a card. Is how can I play so that they are prevented from playing certain cards? Yeah. And
that that is such. I also feel like in Hearthstone specifically, it matters so much more to disrupt your opponent's turn on your turn, because in Magic, it's not I go, you go, I go, you go. Like in Magic, you can respond to every single thing your opponent plays if you have mana up. Whereas in Hearthstone, if you float that mana, you don't get to respond at all. So being able to force their hand on your turn to try to respond to you, which is you becoming the proactive player out of the dynamic of the game, is such a big power move.
And instead of just playing out Dirty Rat on 2, which wins me games, you can try to wait until you have not, if you think they have their combo pieces or whatever, and then it's just later on and you're well, they haven't played any of these 3 cards on the left. One of them is probably Hadonis, so I have a way to deal with it if I pull it out. And that's the thing you always got to remember with Dirty Rat. You don't just play Dirty Rat. You have to be able to deal with what you've pulled from Dirty Rat. Otherwise, you've probably given your opponent an advantage, unless it's a battle cry or something like that. So you take that information and use that for the disruption that you're going to play as well. Or if you think maybe you're going to have to react to that, I think they have X, Y, or Z. My solution to that is Yogg, and I have Yogg in hand. So maybe I'm not going to play out Yogg now when I can deal with things another way, because I think they have what they need, and I'll play Yogg afterwards to clean that up. So it really makes a big difference.
Yeah. And I think kind of the last big point that I wanted to touch on with hand reading is the size of their hand. Right? If they only have 2 cards in their hand versus if they have 9 cards in their hand, that gives you different information. If they have 9 cards in their hand and they are a deck that is running removal or is going to have answers to what you are doing, then with that many cards in hand, it's much more likely that they do have those answers for what you're doing. If they are a deck like that and they only have 2 cards or 3 cards in their hand, it's a lot less likely that they have that. And maybe it's because maybe you have baited some of that stuff out. Maybe you've just been applying so much pressure that they have had to use those removals. And now you've been able to continue in the game long enough where they've played a bunch of cards from their hand and, you're able to keep going. I think in aggro and more aggressive style decks, you're likely to see your opponent running out of cards more often than something like a control deck, right? So they're going to be whittling down their hand much faster, playing multiple cards at a time, which can also give you that knowledge. First of all, a little bit earlier in the game, if you see them start dropping 2-3 cards at a time, there's some sort of combo or some sort of aggressive deck, right? You can kind of recognize that just on the play of what they're playing from their hand, even without looking at their cards that they've played. So just even looking at the hand and seeing how many cards there are, kind of how they've been using those cards, can give you a lot of information.
And I would say don't take this to don't make this the end all be all of how you play. This is a tool in your toolbox. You do not want analysis paralysis. You don't want to. Sometimes you just got to make them have it. A lot of times you just got to make them have it. So if you feel pretty confident with hand reading that, hey, they have to have it, then maybe you still have to make them have it. Or maybe you're not sure. Like this is not an exact science. And the ultimate, make their health 0 is probably the easiest way, because they may have cards, but if they don't have health, they can't play cards. So use this as a tool, but don't just sit there and lock up because you think they might have this card or this card or this card. You still got to play your cards. You still got to execute your game plan. You just want to use this to hopefully, pardon me, inform some decisions.
Yeah, exactly. This is information that you want to use to help you making your decisions during the game. It's not if they have X amount of cards, never play this, right? That's not the whole point of hand reading. It's to inform your decisions, as Tito said. That's a really, really good way to put it.
Huh? Very good, Don. Anything else before we wrap this show up?
I think just on my end, hand reading is very difficult, but the more you practice it, the better you're going to get at it. So my advice, as always, every time that we do these topics is, the same kind of advice, but practice it, get better at it. Take a couple games, for example, and say, okay, the next 3 games I play, I don't care if I win or lose. I'm just going to focus as hard as I can on focusing on their hand and thinking through these questions to myself. Did they keep something in the mulligan? Did they get cards in the mulligan that they're now using? Or have they held on to those cards for a long time that they're not using? What does that mean? Are they playing their best, quote unquote, best plays on curve? Why might they be doing that or not be doing that? What do I think they have? And just practice it. Take a couple games and say, I don't care if I win or lose. I don't care how this game goes. I probably am going to make mistakes during the game. Whatever, that's fine. My only goal is to focus just on hand reading and work myself through those questions. Slow down my play enough to just think, okay, what does their hand tell me right now? Okay, what is their hand telling me now? Okay, they still haven't played this thing. What's it telling me now? Okay, they played this all in a row. What is this telling me about the rest of their hand? Okay. All right. Well, that happened. The game's over. Okay, next game. I'm going to focus on hand reading. Okay, and just work through those questions. And you don't have to do this, with like the most strict like formatting or anything, just do what works for you, right? As I've said before, you can write stuff down. You can just kind of take mental notes. If you do have a deck tracker, you can use that. Or if you want to even practice, you can try like turning the, like on HS Replay, it'll tell you like what turn they drew that card, right? So it'll say like 0s for the mulligan phase, and they'll have a 1 for first turn. That's what they drew. You can turn that off if you want to like really practice making sure you're focused on looking at their hand and not just automatically looking at those numbers. Or if it helps you to look at those numbers, turn it on if it's not on. Just kind of figure out what works for you and take it a little bit at a time and focus on it, and then add in another skill that you want to add in when you get a little bit more comfortable with that.
Luke, you've turned off your targeting, Peter. What's wrong? So and again, we talked about the weapon before, off of Instrument Tech. It's little things that you can pick up that give in to disrupt your opponent's hand reading as well. Like if you have a coin and an innervate and you're using one of them, play the coin. They know you have the coin. They don't know you have the innervate. And will it make a difference in the end? Probably not, but it might inform their decision where, if someone's hand reading you and they don't think you have the ability to play a counter the turn afterwards and you do, well, good for you. You may have just won a game by picking the proper 0 mana card that gave you a mana.
Yeah. I mean, there's been games even with the big spell mage that we've talked about that works on getting coins and trying to, trade the coin cost for the big costs. Okay. I've had a game where I literally had a hand that had 1 card in it and 6 coins. But my opponent knew that information. So to them, I had one card because the coins were useless at that point. But my opponent had that information because they were paying attention. So they knew my hand was a bunch of coins and I had one card. So that kind of meant that they could do whatever they wanted, right? They said, I can play this. It's so unlikely with one card essentially in their hand that they can do anything. So yeah, paying attention to cards that are generated or things like coins or, when they're drawing stuff helps a lot for sure.
Well, that was a lot of information. I don't think I even ate dinner, but I'm ready for dessert. Doc, how about some dessert?
Yeah, dessert sounds great. So, Dawn, what is your favorite comfort movie?
Ooh.
So this is you're sitting on the couch. It's a rainy day. You don't really feel like doing the 17 videos that you have left to do, and you're flipping through the channel. This movie's on. You're glued. You're not getting up.
Can I give a couple? Because there's a couple that I think would be tied. Okay, so Jurassic Park.
Yes.
I love the Jurassic Park movies. Or Underworld. I love the Underworld series too. It's like guilty pleasure. But if Underworld is on, I mean, who can deny Kate Beckinsale? You gotta love Kate Beckinsale. So I love it. And Jurassic Park, I mean, it's dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
Can't argue with that either.
Clever girl.
Yep, exactly. I am still so bummed. Side note, last year, around Christmas time, they had a Jurassic Park makeup kit. And they had it was whole eyeshadow thing. And when you opened it, it played the Jurassic Park theme music. And one of the eyeshadows was called Clever Girl. And I didn't get it for myself. And then when I went back, there was no more. And I regret it still. I'm still so mad at myself that I didn't do it. I'm not even that big into makeup, but I'm I didn't do it. I should have done it. I could have worn Clever Girl makeup at Worlds. No, disaster. Oh, yes. There you go. There's my movies.
Wonderful choices. Listeners, please leave us a review. We prefer 5 stars, but because it helps visibility. Give us an honest rating. Let us know the good, bad, the ugly, because we want to make this show the best it can be for us and the best it can be for you. And if you leave us a review or email us at the show email, we'll read it out on the show. Thank you. Dawn, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, DawniedK, DAWNIEDK. You can find me on Twitch and YouTube, Dragonrider TCCG. You can hear me talking all things standard Hearthstone over at the Dr. 3HS podcast and talking all things card games in general over at the TCCG Roundtable podcast.
Doc, how about yourself?
You can find me primarily on Twitter at Doc McButt, and not including this month because this month is extremely busy for me. But you can find me streaming Hearthstone on Saturdays and Sundays at Doc McButt over on Twitch. How about yourself, Tito?
You can find me on Twitter and Twitch and YouTube and TikTok at Tito Santana HS. Like I said, maybe a little less over the next couple weeks, but we'll be back once we get things sorted. So, Dragonrider, you got anything you want to promote this week or shout outs?
So obviously I already kind of plugged my videos that I'm doing. Been really enjoying the Wild Hearts Wednesday and Star Wars Saturdays. So definitely check those out on my YouTube. Shout outs as always to the two of you. Thank you so much for having me on again. It's always a blast. I love it. And I'm going to say shout out to the Wild Hearts team because it's been an absolute pleasure to kind of get to know them and hang out and get to know the game and work on that content. And it's really revitalized my energy and motivation for doing content and for card games. I mean, I always love card games, but it's given me a new, a renewed excitement. So shout outs to the Wild Hearts team.
Doc, how about yourself?
As always, Dawn, thank you so much for coming back on. It's always a pleasure to get edumacated by you. Your understanding and knowledge and insight on card game theory is very fun. to listen to for me. So it's always a great time. And I do want to also shout out Storm Rage and Gingersaurus and Raven, because they were fantastic this weekend. Absolutely loved getting to hang out with them again. And love you all. Tito, how about yourself?
Wow, so Steve Moldenhall, not fantastic.
Steven's in his own category. He doesn't have to worry about it.
Fair enough. A couple shout outs. I want to shout out Cora, who reached out on Twitter today and just kind of, gave us a little insight on what's been going on with her as far as not being on social media. And it was nice to see. And we appreciate you. It's 5 years for her on the Hearthstone team. So congratulations there. But yeah, we're big fans here, bread and butter of Cora and the entire family. I'm going to shout out Doc's Frogs, who stayed silent today.
They did.
And just a programming note at the end here. We have a guest coming up next week who is from Florida. Florida is also having another guest, which is I believe, Cat 4 hurricane right now. So with Doc on vacation, and if that episode gets pushed, we may not have an episode next week. We may just, punt for the week. So fear not. We will be back the week after if we are not there this week, but hopefully everything will work out okay. And more importantly, I hope everybody in Florida is going to be safe. This has been kind of a rough week, couple weeks. Yeah. But anyway, guys, I think we're toast. We'll see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Slide two brothers meet one another when they slide up to the mic. It's bread and butter with one another. Let's start up that recording light.